Hello and welcome, my name is Crash, and today we're taking a dive into the absurdly gigantic world of Shonen Jump magazines. And I started this video thinking that would have been a breeze, but I vastly underestimated just how many magazines there have been. Today we're going to take the most complete look at Shonen Jump magazines that I can offer you. We're going to be looking at the main ones, the spin-offs, and all the one-off issues. Sadly, I can promise you that this list is complete. Simply put, I found some magazines by sheer luck on my research, and there's a couple that I could only find a mention here or there, so it's impossible for me to say that there maybe aren't some of them that just simply haven't surfaced online. What I can say, however, is that even if you think you know all the Jump magazines, I can assure you there's going to be at least one of them that you haven't heard of. And more likely than not, there's going to be at least 20. And if you just heard that and thought, is there even 20 Shonen Jump magazines? Well, you're not ready for the depths that we're about to take in this video. So get ready, because we're going to start right now. And let's start simple. We can divide the Jump line into two lines. The Shonen Jump ones that include all the Shonen magazines, and the Young Jump ones which include all the Seinen magazines. Not every single magazine in the line includes the word Shonen or the word Young, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to be dividing them as such, and I'm going to be talking about all the Shonen ones first and then all the Seinen ones afterwards. That said, you may be wondering why there isn't a Shoujo Jump or something. Is Jump so against the idea of a female audience that they won't even do a single Shoujo magazine in their line? Well, no. At least I don't think so. The thing to know here is that Jump isn't a company, it's a brand owned by Shueisha. And Shueisha does have actually two separate shoujo magazines that even predate Shonen Jump. One of them being Margaret, which started in 1963, and the massively popular Ribbon, which started in 1955, and still is the second most popular shoujo magazine in Japan. With both of them keeping the shoujo demographic in good hands, it's time for us to jump into Jump. That was not supposed to be a pun. Of course, the first magazine we're going to be talking about is Weekly Shonen Jump, except it's not called that, at least not yet. Released simply as Shonen Jump in July of 1968, this is the first magazine with Jump in its name. It was released bi-weekly to fill the gaps where the other bi-weekly Shueisha Shonen magazine, Shonen Book, have missed. The magazine had and still has the Jump parrot as the mascot, which you can find in every issue. This was not foreshadowing for One Piece, rather the early slogan of "Let's embark into the world of Shonen Jump" gave them parroty feels, and so they wanted a logo that reflected that. When Shonen Book eventually got cancelled, Shonen Jump started being published weekly and then changed its name to Weekly Shonen Jump, name that it kept till then and will likely keep until the darkness consumes us all. The magazine was released to compete with the older Weekly Shonen Sunday and Weekly Shonen Magazine, and while it took some decades to finally surpass them, titles like Akuro no Ken, Saint Seiya, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and of course Dragon Ball, all helped the magazine become the biggest success that it is today. While the magazine lost to Shonen Magazine in the late 90s, it would surpass them again with help of titles like One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. There's definitely too many titles from Weekly Shonen Jump that have achieved national and international success that I cannot even name them all, but other titles like Slam Dunk, Demon Slayer, Yu-Gi-Oh!, My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, Captain Tsubasa, Gintama are all definitely among them. I could dedicate an entire channel just talking about Weekly Shonen Jump, and some will argue that I've done just that, but I believe the most interesting part of this video is everything else. So we're going to be leaving this here and talk about the second magazine in the line. If we had Weekly Shonen Jump and bi-weekly Shonen Jump, what we need next is of course monthly Shonen Jump. Starting in 1970 as a special issue of Weekly Shonen Jump called Besatsu Shonen Jump, this magazine will eventually become its own thing and rebranded to Monthly Shonen Jump in 1974. Monthly got popular in the 80s and 90s with a bunch of manga tie-ins of video games, things like Fire Emblem, Breath of Fire, Blue Dragon, and even Persona. Monthly doesn't really have many manga that are popular outside of Japan, at least as far as I can tell, with the most popular being 2004's Rosario plus Vampire. It's also the magazine that published Angel Densetsu in 1992 by the same mangaka of Claymore, which also started in Monthly Shonen Jump but eventually changed magazines to Jump SQ, a manga we're going to be talking about very soon. But firstly, Monthly did have a bunch of special issues and spin-offs of its own. Most of these main magazines have one or more, with Weekly Shonen Jump having tons, so we'll talk about all of those at the end of the shonen section. Now, there's going to be a lot of spin-offs and special issues of main magazines in this video. These are sold separately as their own little thing, but they're considered spin-offs because most of the time they publish stuff related to the main series of the main magazine. Be it special chapters, ending serialization for a while if they're being released sporadically, or just having news and merch of them. Other than that, most of these just feature a lot of one-shot manga. The first of these spin-offs we're going to be talking about is Hobby's Jump, released sporadically between 1983 and 1988. Hobby's Jump was a magazine targeted more towards gaming, probably trying to capitalize with the appeal of all the gaming spin-offs of Monthly. With only 16 issues to its name, it's a little bit hard to find much information about it. As far as I can tell, it's mostly video game reviews and the like. The most popular manga in Hobby's Jump seemed to be one called Network Senshi, at least that's what I assume based on the fact that it's the only manga I've seen mentioned in all of my research. Another spin-off was called Monthly Shonen Jump Original, which I did not find much information about, and that is going to be a common thread among a couple of these magazines, and by a couple I mean a lot of these magazines. It seems to have run between 1985 and 1997 on a regular channel. The two series that I found at Random Magazine are both spin-offs of a Monthly Jump series called Yami Karyudo. There's also Monthly Shonen Jump Zokan, which was released every January between 1975 and 1983, except it didn't in 1982. And it had a mid-year issue release in both 1977 and 1981. I don't know, they just did things that they wanted. Clearly. And yes, this is mostly one-shot manga. Then there's one-off special issue called Mystery Jump. This was released in August of 1991, and by its name you can assume this was a compilation of detective and mystery one-shots. There's also a joint spin-off of both monthly and weekly Shonen Jump called Go Jump. This one was a yearly spin-off that lasted 2 years, with the first issue releasing in January of 2006 and the final issue releasing in the same month in 2007. As far as I can tell, this is mostly extras and bonuses for series that were ongoing on the main magazines, things like Bleach, Black Cat, and Claymore. Possibly the reason why Go Jump last issue was in 2007 was because Monthly was cancelled that year as well, its last issue releasing in July of 2007. It didn't take too long for the spot to be filled with another magazine, essentially being the exact same thing, the monthly version of Shonen Jump. Jump Square, or Jump SQ, was launched in November of 2007 and it's still going strong today. While it was indeed essentially the same thing, even bringing monthly series to it, like Claymore and Rosario plus Vampire 2, Jump Square is definitely the most well-known of the two, at least in the West, even though that's more likely than not just because it is the most recent one. But it does boast a lot of titles that are well regarded outside of Japan. We're talking things like Blue Exorcist, Separate of the End, Platinum Hand, To Love Through Darkness, Morality the Patriot, and it's also the current home of World Trigger. It's also very often that popular mangaka publishes one-shots there. People like Tatsuki Fujimoto, Masashi Kishimoto, Tatsuki Oba, or even Yusuke Murata have all been in the magazine in some form or another. But if Jump SQ is so good, then where is Jump SQ2, you ask? Well, it's here. Jump SQ2, or Jump SQ the Second, is the spin-off magazine that ran for 4 issues from 2008 to 2010, mostly having extras from Jump SQ's main series and some random one-shots from various mangaka. Its main claim to fame being the manga Ultimo, written by the one and only Stan Lee and drawn by Hiroyuki Take, the mangaka behind Shaman King. SQ2 didn't last too long. It eventually was replaced not by SQ3 or SQ4 or SQ5, but instead SQ19. I have no idea what happened to all the other 17 SQs. Jump SQ19 ran between 2010-2015, originally quarterly, but eventually changing to bi-monthly. Because it ran for a longer time, it also has a couple more series to its belt. The most read, according to my name list, is Keikai Sensen, as well as Jimaru Edition, which is one I personally read and enjoyed it. When Jump SQ19 was discontinued in February of 2015, it was again replaced by another one very similar in structure called Jump SQ Crown. This one went back to the quarterly format. Crown ran for 3 years before being replaced too by the still ongoing Jump SQ Rise. Again, all of these are mostly the same, and because they are quarterly, they don't really have too many series on them, mostly focusing on extra stories and one-shots. 2 main series that they did host are the exact 2 for the 2 magazines, being The Greyman and Beat the Vandal Buster, both relatively famous manga that started in other magazines, but after some hiatus they returned to this quarterly format. The final spin-off we need to talk about in Jump SQ is Jump SQ Lab, which only ran for 2 issues, as far as I can tell, one in 2011 and another in 2012. And yeah, it's mostly just one-shots and extra stories. There's also Jump SQ-M and Jump SQ Comic Selection, but actually neither of these are manga magazines, instead being compilations of one-shots that ran on various Jump SQ magazines. The next magazine I want to talk about is V-Jump. Remember when I talked about Abi's Jump, the magazine dedicated to gaming? Well, V-Jump is the follow-up to that, this time as a proper magazine and not a spin-off of any other. V-Jump started all the way back in 1993, making it the oldest monthly Jump magazine still ongoing today. And while I think it's mostly ignored in the West, it does include some of the most popular sequels to Shonen Jump manga. This is essentially the home of Akira Toriyama, with manga like The Return of Dr. Slump and a lot of Dragon Ball manga like Dragon Ball Super, as well as having a lot of Dragon Quest related content. The mascot of the magazine was actually even drawn by Akira Toriyama himself. It's this dragon that actually does appear on Dragon Quest video games. It was named by the audience as V-Dragon. That was the best I could come up with. I do find the Jump and Dragon Quest collaborations very, very interesting. Not only do we have V-Jump and Akira Toriyama being a big part of Dragon Quest's visuals, but of course we also have The Adventures of Dai, the classic Shonen Jump battle manga from the 90s. But Dragon Quest is a Square Enix product, and Square Enix actually has their own line of shonen magazines called Gangan, which holds classics like Fullmetal Alchemist and Soul Eater, and indeed a lot of Dragon Quest related stuff as well. It does seem like this collaboration is useful for both of them, so, you know, good for them. As far as non-Toriyama related stuff, V-Jump is of course also the home of Boruto, as well as pretty much every Yu-Gi-Oh manga after the original, often even offering special Yu-Gi-Oh cards as bonuses, as well as having some Digimon manga. As for non-manga related, this magazine does seem to have a lot of Square Enix video game guides, as well as trading card game news. Even though it's been ongoing for so long, contrary to Jump SQ, V-Jump doesn't really have spin-off magazines. The exceptions being Saikyo Jump, which started as a spin-off of both V-Jump and Weekly Shonen Jump in December of 2010. But after its first 4 issues, it moved from quarterly to monthly and became its own thing. The magazine was also bi-monthly for a while, but it's back to being monthly since last year. Contrary to all the other Jump magazines, this one seemed to be focused on a younger audience. It could kind of be considered the Kodomo magazine of Jump line, and it mostly has gag spin-off manga of mainstays of both V-Jump and Weekly Shonen Jump. We're talking about things like One Piece Party, Shopperman, Dragon Ball ST, Goro Sensei Q, and of course I'm from Japan's Final Months, which if you have never heard about it, it has one of the most interesting runs in Shonen Jump history, in my opinion, and I made an entire video about it. Link is gonna be there. Similar to how V-Jump has the mascot drawn by Toriyama, Saikyo Jump has this thing drawn by Ichiro Oda. I could not find its name, but if it was named by the viewers, it's probably called Psycho Lion. Since this magazine is made for younger kids, it doesn't try to entice them with good manga, and rather with the promise of merch. Mainly, it seems to offer Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dragon Ball cards, as well as posters from your favorite Jump series. Being a bit of a spin-off magazine itself, it doesn't really have any special issues or anything of the like, which means we are now ready to tackle the world of Weekly Shonen Jump special issues and spin-offs across the years. And I think we need to start with the line of manga that ended up culminating with Jump Giga. The first of these were the Weekly Shonen Jump season specials. Essentially, like almost all the others we'll be talking about, it was published once a season, and starting with the Spring Special of 1985 and ending with the Summer Special of 1986, lasting more than a decade. Seasonal specials started all the elements that we're going to see across all these magazines, by being essentially one-shot compilations, especially from a lot of brand new authors that will later be serialized in the magazine. The only notable exception to this is Bastard, which eventually moved from the main magazine to these issues. However, despite being mostly one-shot titles, the magazine would promote themselves with material from the main magazine, including pretty much every cover being an actual popular Jump series at the time, even if the only thing related to it in the magazine was actually just promotional material, and this is still happening. After the end of Seasonal Special, the one to take its place, by being essentially the same magazine, was Akamaru Jump, starting in January of 1997. The biggest difference being that it wasn't published during the autumn season, which meant that it was released twice a year instead of 4. While being essentially the same, Akamaru might be notable for having been the home of the original one-shots of both Naruto and Bleach. Akamaru does have its own spin-offs because, you know, this list wasn't big enough. Akamaru Jump was a one-issue magazine that was published in April of 2004, and as you can probably tell by the cover, it has a special chapter of JoJo's Part 7. Apparently the character in the cover did not appear in the chapter though, which I find incredibly funny. The other spin-off managed to last a little bit longer than one issue, believe it or not, lasting 2. Jump D Revolution sounds like I'm making magazines up because I want to pad this video out, but they are real. Published in November 2005 and 2006, I cannot find any information if it contains any Death Note related stuff in it, but since both covers are Death Note related, I just hope it does. Akamaru lasts all the way to February of 2010, being replaced by the next in line. Next. Jump Next. Jump Next started almost right away after Akamaru in the spring of 2010, and it was quarterly until April of 2014 when it changed to a bi-monthly schedule. Jump Next also seems to be the first in line to have epilogue chapters of series that were cancelled in Weekly Shonen Jump. However, during its last issues, it did have a proper serialization, if we can call it that, being the short sequel to Kuroko no Basket, Extra Game. Jump Next would end in June of 2016, making it the shorter of the line, and it would be replaced by the still ongoing Jump Giga, which returned to the quarterly format. Giga actually has a couple more of short serializations instead of just one-shots, even if that's still the bulk of what it has. Probably the most important series in Jump Giga being Jujutsu Kaisen 0, which was even adapted into a movie. You probably heard about it. I know I did. It's also where Gintama published its final chapters. There is another magazine of the same vein that apparently was going to replace Giga in 2017, less than a year after Giga even started. This magazine was called Jump Cross. It lasted for that one issue and then it died out while Giga continued, and I found no actual break in releases that year, so I have no idea. But that finished all of this weird line, so I want to move on to something more interesting. Fresh Jump is another manga magazine that focuses on one-shots. This is just friend for all the next magazines, okay? It's fine. As the name may indicate, Fresh was a place for rookie mangaka to publish and work on their one-shots before potentially starting to work on serializations on the real deal. It ran monthly from 1992 all the way to 1989, and it wasn't replaced with anything else. As for a series that actually did run the magazine, we have a spin-off of Kinnikuman Man called Tatakai Ramen Man, as well as Akira Toriyama's Clumsy Manga Laboratories, which is a manga about writing manga which I still would really like to read. In September of 1987, there was also the Fresh Jump Summer Vacation Special, which existed. Just a disclaimer, for the next ones, the information that I'm about to give you is mostly everything that I could find. Anikishi Special, the only information I could find on this manga is that it sure did exist. I found an issue of it for sale on eBay, and it does seem to not really be a manga magazine as much as it is a bunch of information on Shonen Jump anime, including Naruto and Bleach. The issue I found dates from August 2005, but I have no idea if this magazine only ran for that particular issue or not. Another one that I have virtually no information about is Yomu Jump. The only thing I could find is that there was at least an issue of it in December of 2002. With Naruto in the cover, and apparently there's an interview of Araki inside. If this is the only issue and if there was more and what was it about, I really don't know. The only place I could even find information about this was the JoJo Wiki, because JoJo fans are insane and I am happy for it. This is not even going to be the last time where the only information I found about a magazine was on a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Wiki. So, E-Jump is a special issue of Weekly Shonen Jump that came in January of 2000. And just like everything that came out in January of 2000, it was related to technology. Because during that time we all thought we were living in the future because we just happened to be alive where the year changed from 1 to 2. Because of that, this manga is apparently all about the wonders of electronic equipment, and it even came with 2 very amazing CD-ROMs. These were PS1 demo discs, and as you can see, one is green and the other one is yellow. And I found some screenshots of the contents. You guys have no idea how surprised I am to find this. The screenshots don't really tell everything that is on this thing, especially because there are 2 CDs, but I asked my friends to translate this screenshot, and apparently it contains a trailer for the then upcoming Final Fantasy IX. And there's also this picture of Cloud, and I don't know. I know I shouldn't have spent so much time on E-Jump, but I kind of went on a deep dive on this one, and I really need to tell you guys what I found, okay? I'm pretty sure this was not what people wanted when they asked me to do this video for them. Continuing the oddity space, there's also this one issue long magazine called Jump Heroes, which was published in August of 2005. Again, not that much information about it, but if I'm guessing, I assume this was done as a tie-in with the release of the DS game Jump Superstars, which was released on the exact same month of the exact same year. I've actually even played the sequel on stream on the channel. It's one of my favorite games of all time. One of the reasons why I think these are related is because Murata was credited on the Comic Vine page of this magazine, and Murata did write a one-shot special manga for Superstars in 2005, and I cannot find where it was published, so I think it might have been this magazine. But I sadly don't have any confirmation of this information, so just speculation. Okay, Shonen Jump Gag Special is something that I can more or less get what it means. Running for 3 issues, Cake Special of 2001, 2002, and you guessed it, 2005, were released around the beginning of each year. I couldn't actually find any information about the contents, but I'm assuming it's extra stories of the gag manga that ran the magazine at the time, as well as likely to have gag one-shots as well. These are proof that Jump always had a strong presence in gag manga if you ever needed one. But for the gag haters, there is a magazine dedicated to the Battle Shonen. Jump Versus was a single issue released on May of 2013, with apparently 12 different battle one-shots. Like Jump Heroes, I'm also assuming this was probably released as a way to promote J-Star Victory Versus, a game that had been announced in the previous year and that was released in the beginning of 2014. Sure, it isn't the exact date like with Heroes, but it is still similar name and around the same time, so I think it checks out. Reader's Cup 97 was a special issue released in 97 that contained all the one-shots that were released for the titular cup. The Reader's Cup is just one of the many awards and contests that Jump does to promote fans and readers to send their own material, which is actually the main forum they get new artists. You may occasionally hear about the Golden Future Cup that happens every year, and it's like that. Random question of the video: do you know Kinnikuman? Yes? Well, that's good, because there is a magazine called Kinnikuman Jump. If you don't, that's fine. It's a classic battle manga from Jump from the 70s that is still going strong today. Kinnikuman is also often considered to be the first true battle manga. Kinnikuman Jump was released twice, first in December of 2017 and its second issue in December of 2018. This magazine mostly contained reprinted chapters of the main series, featuring the best fights of the manga. But Kinnikuman is not the only manga to have had its own magazine in Jump. The longest running manga in Jump history, Kochikame, also had one under its name. Released in September of 2016 to celebrate the series' 40th anniversary, Kochikame Jump contains reprints of previous chapters as well as new material by various mangaka like Araki and Eiichiro Oda. This actually is the 3rd anniversary issue of Kochikame, with Super Kochikame being released in 2006 for the 30th anniversary and Kochikame 999 in 2011 for the 35th. I find it hard to consider these two as magazines, however, because as far as I can tell, they were released in a more volume-like format. Kochikame 999 even being considered the special volume 999 of the series. Super Kochikame may be a pun on the Super Jump magazine that we'll be talking about in a long while, so maybe that one can be considered as well. Either way, that's all of them. And that leaves us with one final category of weekly Shonen Jump spin-offs to tackle: the anniversary issues. There aren't as many as you think, or at the very least I couldn't find many myself. Jump Multiworld was the other manga where the single bit of information I have comes from JoJo's wikis. Now, this one is from 1993, celebrated the 25th anniversary of Weekly Shonen Jump, but this was not just the name of a magazine. Instead, Jump Multiworld was an event similar to Jump Fiesta, which, if you don't know, is a special convention that happens every December where Jump just drops news and talks about all their series. From what I can gather, the magazine was given to the people that went to that event and included mostly just information on the history of Jump, as well as 4 coma strips for some series that ran the magazine, including the one I could find, of course, from JoJo's Part 4. JoJo fans, you guys are dedicated. Since I assume the other two don't have JoJo stuff in them, I couldn't find any information or cover for them, but Wikipedia does list what it seems to be 2 more anniversary issues, one for the 30th and another for the 35th anniversary. Again, no actual information on these ones, or if there are more issues of other anniversaries, or if they were tied to events or not like the previous ones. I couldn't really find anything on these two other than Wikipedia saying that they should exist. So that leaves us with a pretty complete list of physical Shonen Jump magazines, I hope. I seriously do. But before we move on to the Seinen ones, we need to talk about the digital medium. Now, a lot of you are probably aware of Shonen Jump's digital magazine, but did you know that Shonen Jump Plus was not the first digital magazine in Jump? Yes, the predecessor to it was called Jump Live, and it was released in 2013, and it did not live that year. Publishing some manga like the spin-off of Tokyo Ghoul Jack, and that one manga that I'm not sure how to pronounce is Eldive? I think that's how you pronounce that. Shueisha thought the platform was too confusing and discontinued it despite actually having some success. But in September of 2014, Shonen Jump Plus was released, bringing with it some of the series that was started on Live. This is a free online magazine published every single week. Some manga publish it weekly, other bi-weekly, and other monthly. And in recent times, Jump Plus has become probably the second most popular Jump magazine, thanks to some gigantic hits like Spy X Family, Dawn, Kaiju No. 8, Hell's Paradise, and Fire Punch. This magazine is putting its name on the map, and if there's another Shonen Jump magazine to pay attention to other than weekly, it is most definitely this one, but you probably don't even need me to mention that. But that's all for the Shonen magazines, so we're now going to move into the Seinen ones. There's a little bit less than the Shonen ones, but there's still a good amount, so let's start. And just like with the Shonen ones, we need to start with Weekly Young Jump. Weekly Young Jump started in June 7, 1979, and it was created to be essentially the Shonen Jump of Seinen manga, and it's of course the father of this entire line. And while it's not as popular as Weekly Shonen Jump, Weekly Young Jump is still going strong today, being one of the top 10 best-selling manga magazines and the second best-selling seinen manga magazine, actually, just below Big Comic Original. Originally, the covers of Weekly Young Jump show their mascot Buddy Bear, but it slowly started changing to show more real people. Those people would eventually turn into almost exclusively graphic idols, which by 1995 was essentially the staple of the covers. It still occasionally shows a manga character in the cover, like most recently for the ending of Golden Kamui, but it's still mostly just graphic idols. Maybe Young Jump's biggest call to fame, at least in the West, is Tokyo Ghoul and its sequel, but that is far from being the only popular manga on the roster. From current hits like Kaguya-sama Love is War and Oshino Code to all-time classics like Elfen Lied, Gantz, Kingdom, and Real. That's still missing a lot of the big titles, but you get the point. This magazine is big, and because of it, it has its fair share of spin-offs. Now, it's not as many as Weekly Shonen Jump, so I'm just going to try to talk about all of them right now. Starting, of course, with the magazine that lasted the entirety of one issue, Young Jump Mirage. Not to be confused with Miracle Jump, we'll tackle that one later. This one was released in January of 1992, and that is all I have to say about this one. Apparently, Gonagai participated in it, I'm just not sure with what. And this is true for a lot of these, so I'm just going to try to speed run some of these single issues, okay? Young Jump 30 was a magazine that I originally thought was released to celebrate Young Jump's 30th anniversary, but apparently it was released in 1990, when the anniversary would be in 2009. So I have no idea what it's actually about. Young Jump Seed was released in September of 2013 and had a special chapter of One Punch Man. The cover also looks cool. For one that I actually have a little bit more information about, Young Jump Battle was released in October of 2019 and includes 12 rookie one-shots of various battle manga. This is the Young Jump versions of Jump Versus that we talked about earlier. In August of 2021, there's also a follow-up to it, but instead of being the second issue, was actually called Young Jump Battle 2. There's actually been a lot of these themed magazines lately. Young Jump Love, for example, was released in December of the same year and included Kaguya-sama Extra Chapter and romance-related one-shots. Then in August of 2020, there was Young Jump Sports, which had a bunch of sports one-shot. And in December of 2021, there was Young Jump Erwin, which consisted of various girl-centered one-shots as well. As for a magazine that lasted 2 issues, Weekly Young Jump Zokan Mantaro was a special annual issue of Weekly Young Jump that lasted for only 2 years, 2006 and 2007. Young Jump The Great Senshin Go is something that I swear I try to look more into because I am generally curious what The Great Senshin Go even is, but I could not find anything about this weird title. It's a limited run that lasted for 12 issues, from April 1985 all the way to January 1988. The covers all look quite fun with these cartoony characters depicted, but that's all I have about this one. Young Jump Gold was a recent magazine which first cover was drawn by the mangaka of Tokyo Ghoul. It started in May 2017 and ended on its 4th issue on December of 2018. It also published the manga Meishu, which is such a well-known manga that I couldn't find a single picture of it. For an interesting one, at least to me, there is a magazine called Tokyo 2020 Paralympics Jump. This Young Jump spin-off was released in the year of, you guessed it, 2017. What? This magazine has been released yearly, with the 5th and so far final issue being released in August of 2021. I believe this should be the final issue because this series were released to promote the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics, which ended up happening in August of last year as well. This was a collaborative effort between Jump and Shueisha's sports magazine Sportiva, and included various mangaka known for their sports manga, including Takiko Inoue, which not only did Slam Dunk but also Real, which is a manga about wheelchair basketball. Now, when you're this far into the list, your excitement for each and every new magazine starts to die, but Hawaru Young Jump is one that really appealed to me. The covers look really cool with this cute girl jumping around aesthetic that reminds me more of anime than it does manga. This one had 2 issues a year from 2011 to 2013, making a total of 6, if you know how to count. Another thing that I found very interesting about this one is the numbering. It goes 0, 0.5, Sweet, Peter 0.99 and 8 out of 8. The release dates also are meant to coincide with special dates, like summer vacation, graduation day, or in the case of 2012, both Valentine's and White Day. From what I found from a random Amazon review that I put through Google Translation, it seems like these magazines had graphic idol pictures and collections of one-shots that seem to mostly be focused on cute girls. Talking about cute girls, I don't think this one counts as a magazine, but I'm going to mention anyways. It's Young Jump Green Note. From what I can gather, this one was an annual catalog of all the graphic idols that were in the magazine that year. I can at least assure that it is a catalog of graphic idols. I could find proof of a 1998 and a 1991 editions of this catalog. I do think it was an annual thing, which eventually was replaced with Young Jump's uniform catalog, which I found proof of a 2004 edition as well as the current 2022 one, which tell me that this is very much an ongoing thing. I also found people talking about voting for which girl would be on the 2018 edition, so I think maybe it's not all the graphic idols, but instead just the most voted ones. Okay, so I found two titles in the Japanese Wikipedia that I couldn't really find any more information about, one of them being Young Jump Express and the other being Young Jump Comiclet. There's also apparently Young Jump 1000 piece special, which I assume had 1000 pages, and apparently it's the predecessor to the previously talked about Young Jump Mantaro, but I couldn't find anything else about it. There's also Young Jump DX, which should be a predecessor of Young Jump 30, if I'm understanding the page layout correctly. And for that one, I managed to find the blurriest picture in existence. Just look at that, it looks like a picture of Bigfoot. And this issue is from October of 1994. I'm not sure if there were more issues, but this thing existed at least once in our lifetime. Now that we've scrapped the bottom of the barrel, let's finish this section with the equivalent of monthly Shonen Jump. No, not monthly Young Jump, at least not yet. Before that there was weekly Young Jump Mankaku, and I can hear all the Brazilians laughing. Mankaku was published from 1994 all the way to 2008, and it was essentially the monthly spin-off of Young Jump, even though as far as I can tell it didn't necessarily have a proper schedule. It had its own one-off spin-off in 2008 with the weekly Young Jump Tokubetsu Zokan Mankaku Rookies, which was an issue to celebrate the live-action adaptation of the manga Rookies, which is actually a weekly Shonen Jump manga, and it also had a one-shot sequel in it. After 62 issues, Mankaku was discontinued and it was replaced with the aptly named monthly Young Jump. Now, this magazine was far from being comparable to monthly Shonen Jump, even though it has a similar title. We will be talking about some magazines that will fit that space better, because there were some, but monthly Young Jump, as far as I can tell, is more focused on one-shots and short series. Some of its claims to fame is a spin-off of Liar Game and Sky High Part 4, which I read Part 1, and it was okay, it was good. The magazine would only survive 2 years, ending in late 2010, and it would be replaced by another monthly one-shot factory called Miracle Jump. Miracle Jump would essentially be the same thing as monthly Young Jump, and would carry short series like Gans Gi, for example, or G, as well as publishing the original one-shot of Tokyo Ghoul. Miracle Jump went on hiatus in March of 2010, a hiatus that lasted all the way to now, at least. And I don't know about you, but I'm not holding hopes of this one coming back anytime soon. There was also another monthly spin-off of Young Jump called Young Jump X. The main difference between this one and all the others is that this one actually had real series in it. Sorry, Sky High Part 4 fans. Despite only lasting between 2011 and 2014, this was the home of Shaman King Flowers and Zero, 87 Clockers, and Yoko Kuhan. And we're finally done with all the magazines with Young Jump on its title, so you know what that means? Yes, it is indeed time to talk about all the other monthly Seinen magazines in the Jump line. Oh come on, surely you didn't think that was all of it, did you? So let's start with Super Jump. This one actually started as a bi-weekly spin-off of Weekly Shonen Jump, all the way back in 1986. Now, the reason as to why this is on the Seinen segment is because it quickly became its own thing, and it targeted older audiences than Shonen Jump, so it was considered to be a Seinen magazine. So this one actually was a staple of the line for the longest time, only ending in November of 2011, being replaced by another magazine that we'll be talking about in a little bit. Super Jump was also the home of titles like Golden Boy, Bartender, and Jin, and as per tradition, it also had a bunch of spin-offs to it. The first one of these is Super Jump Alpha, which ran between 1993 and 1995 before being replaced with other magazines. I found different sources that said different magazines, but they all kinda make sense. The first one started in 1995 and it's called Manga All-Man, which makes it hard to know it's a Jump magazine, but it still is. Manga All-Man lasted all the way down to 2002 and it's more well known for the series F Compo. It's also the home of the series Deadman by the Golden Boy mangaka and an unrelated short story called Deadman Q by Araki. I just find it funny that two of the most popular series in the magazine had such similar names and were actually unrelated. Then we get Ho Super Jump, which is actually one of the longest running of all these spin-offs, starting back in 1996. By 2004, Ho Super Jump would start having their own unique serializations, which kinda means that they stopped being a spin-off magazine. That said, most of the notable series I found were related to others, be it a spin-off of Sanctuary, the prequel to Otokojuku, or Ho Tome Ningen 21, which I find interesting to mention because it's actually a sequel of a shonen magazine title and not a Jump one. Oh, Super Jump would not outlive its main magazine, however, being cancelled in 2010. And of course, Super Jump also had their own one-off issues. You and Super Jump was a joint edition of both Super Jump and the Josei magazine You. It was released in July of 2002 to celebrate the anniversary of the magazine You, actually, and it mostly had works by female mangaka. And that's actually not the only time that Super Jump released a magazine focused specifically on female mangaka, as the two-issue special Girls Jump released in January of 2011 and March of 2012 respectively, and that one also had exclusively works by female mangaka. Then we got Manpuko Jump, released in February of 2011, just 1 month after the first issue of Girls Jump. And it was essentially a special issue just focused on food manga one-shots, because that's what people want, I guess. The final spin-off I could find was one called Super Jump High. Originally supposed to be an ongoing spin-off that would focus on different teams on every issue. It started with the Isri team, but sadly it was published just short months before the cancellation of Super Jump, so it only had that one issue. So moving to the next big one, it was the monthly Seinen magazine of Jump for the longest time. No, it's not monthly Young Jump, it's actually Business Jump. Now, as you probably can tell from the name alone, this one targets the working man, the salaryman, the businessman, if you will. And just like any good magazine, this one had a mascot, which was this mouse thing that I couldn't find the name of. I'm just gonna call it Business Mouse. It was created by Susumu Matsushita, which was a mangaka that actually created a lot of mascots as far as I can tell for video games and even sports teams, and is actually the same mangaka that created the mascot for Weekly Young Jump. Now, Business Jump started in 1985 and it had a fantastic run, only ending at the exact same time as Super Jump in 2011, when they were both merged into the magazine that we will be talking afterwards. Business actually had a couple of big names, be it One House or The Summit of Gods, which actually just got a movie adaptation, and of course the original Gummed or Battle Angel Alita, which was one of the first big manga titles in the West. And now for the part that I get demonetized, we're going to be talking about Business Jump spin-offs. As far as I can tell, there's only two, Extra BJ and BJ Con. They seem to be essentially the same. I can find much information about the contents, but I'm assuming it's mostly spin-offs and extra stories, and one-shots as well, because that's what we've been getting so far. Extra BJ ran from 1990 to 2001, and then BJ Con started in 2001 and lasted all the way to 2010. So as I just mentioned a couple times, in 2011, both of these long-running magazines, Business Jump and Super Jump, were discontinued. And they were essentially both merged into a brand new bi-weekly magazine called Grand Jump, due to the changing environment for seinen manga and the changing tastes of readers. Grand Jump is still alive and kicking, and its biggest title is probably the sequel to Innocent Rouge. It's also the home of the current Captain Tsubasa manga, Rising Sun. Yes, that is still ongoing. And of course Buichi's Wallman, and how could we forget Sky High 5, which is not even the last Sky High. Not too long after this rebranding, we got the first Grand Jump spin-off called Grand Jump Premium, a monthly magazine that had a lot of the manga left from both Super and Business Jump. From what I can tell, Grand Jump Premium and the main magazine would shift their series a lot, so some of the big titles in one also ended up running in the other. Probably not the biggest title in the magazine, but this was also the home of Jikoku no Alice from Jiro Matsumoto, which is a mangaka I personally really like. The most popular manga, though, according to Mall, is From Now We Begin Headaches by the mangaka of All Outs. In 2018, Grand Jump Premium was rebranded to Grand Jump Muka, or Mucha. I think it's Muka. name that it still keeps to this day, and with that name it published the sequel to X Arm. Probably the reason for the rebranding of the name was probably to keep it online with the other magazine that they released in 2018, Grand Jump Mecha. Now, I know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. This isn't actually a magazine about mecha. Actually, the main theme of this magazine is sexual entertainment for all genders. This was the one they should have called Extra BJ. This one is also still ongoing, and it has some series like Ask and Arrow's Seed. The reason why it's called mecha is because mecha in Japan means absurd, and I guess this magazine is just that. And the last physical big one on this list is Ultra Jump. Ultra Jump started in 1995 as a seasonal spin-off of Weekly Young Jump, but in 1999 it changed to become its own thing. It was also then that it changed to a bi-monthly schedule, which is one that still keeps to this day. The most obvious name from Ultra Jump is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 7 and Part 8, and, likely to have Part 9 as well. It also published Dogs Bolt and Carnage, Biomega, Ruby, and Battle Angel Lita Last Order. As for Ultra Jump spin-offs, there's Megamix, a spin-off that had its first issue in 2002, and their second one in 2007, and based on covers, it looks good. I'm going to use the last spin-off, Ultra Jump X, to transition between physical to digital magazines, because it's exactly what it is. Starting in 2008 and lasting all the way to 2011, Ultra Jump Egg is actually the oldest Jump online magazine that I could find, which I actually think it's pretty interesting. In terms of actual series in it, there's not too much to talk about. I think Kinnikuman Man Lady and Random Tekken Manga are the two biggest titles in it. Of course, that is not the only Seinen digital magazine, because in 2012, Tonari Young Jump was released. And that one is essentially the Young Jump version of Jump Plus, and it actually had a really good manga start things off called One Punch Man. It's also where Shojin X is being published as well. And I think there's another digital platform. In my research, I found a magazine called Funwari Jump on both Mall and Bakupdate's database. I couldn't find much information in it, but it does seem to be a Seinen magazine, and some of the works published are mentioned as webcomics. So 1 + 1 makes 2, and I think it's a digital magazine, but I cannot really confirm it. And that would close the book. It would be the end of our little journey if we were weak. Now, I want this video to be the most complete as we can, so before we go, there is one last category we need to look at. The non-Japanese ones. The ones released around the world, starting of course with Viz's Shonen Jump. This one will probably bring nostalgia to some of you, having first debuted in the United States in November of 2002. This is the first English version of Shonen Jump. It was released monthly, and it contained chapters of some of the most popular series in it. Its first lineup consisted of Dragon Ball Z, Sandland, One Piece, Yu Yu Hakusho, and Yu-Gi-Oh!, and would eventually publish other big names of Jump like Naruto, Bleach, Slam Dunk, and Gintama. This magazine will last for 10 long years before finally being discontinued and replaced with Weekly Shonen Jump Alpha in 2012, but we'd eventually change the name to just Weekly Shonen Jump in the following year. This was a digital magazine that tried to publish ongoing series very close to the release date of their Japanese counterpart. It didn't publish every series, and it published them with 2 weeks apart at first, but at the time it was by far the best legal option we had. And in 2013 it already had 12 series, and it was actually simul-published with Japan. The initial lineup for that was One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, Toriko, Bakuman, and Nura, Rise of the Yokai Clan. They would add a lot of manga in the following years, including the Jump Start Initiative, which would give us the first hints of how Shonen Jump treats their new manga. But this magazine would only last 2018, when Jump decided to create the Shonen Jump Vault, which includes of course a lot of Shonen Jump manga, and in 2019 we also got Manga Plus globally, which are not magazines but fully realized the idea of publishing every ongoing Jump series at the exact same time as Japan, which is great. However, you may actually be surprised to know that the English version of Viz's Shonen Jump wasn't the only version of it. Yes, there was also a Norwegian and a Swedish version of them. Both of them looked very close to the English counterpart, with the exception of lasting way shorter time. The Swedish version started in November of 2004 and ended in the same month of 2007. And the Norwegian version had an even shorter run, starting from March 2005 to February of 2007. But while the Viz magazine started in 2002, the Taiwanese ones are much older. Not sure exactly how old though, because I couldn't find neither the release date or the end date of Ramen Xiaoyan Top. It seems to have run in the 90s and maybe as early as 80s actually. And eventually the company behind it went under, according to Wikipedia, which means that the magazine was discontinued as well. However, this isn't the only Taiwanese version of Shonen Jump, with the other being Formosa Youth, starting in 1992. This one is still ongoing to this day and is published at the same time as Japan. It doesn't have all series, but it has a decent chunk. Out of the current roster, it has things like One Piece, Jujutsu Kaisen, Blue Box, Sakamoto Days, and even Earthchild, just to name a few. It also seems to publish their own manhwa. The Hong Kong version of Shonen Jump seems to be a magazine called XAM, which the only information I have is that published Captain Tsubasa, Hunter x Hunter, and Dragon Ball, so I'm assuming it ran from the late 90s and early 2000s at least. We also have two Thai magazines. C-Kids was a magazine that ran from 1994 to 2006. I actually came across a thread of someone being super nostalgic about the first issue, which had titles like Captain Tsubasa, Dragon Quest, and Rokudenashi Blues, and over the years it published One Piece, My Hero Academia, and Nisekoi, for example. Boom! That's the other Thai magazine. This one I couldn't find when it started, but I did find a post from 2014 of someone complaining about the cancellation of the magazine due to piracy, and it was saying that it was more than 20 years old, which means it also ran at the exact same time as C-Kids. I'm not 100% sure why they needed two Jump magazines, but this one carried titles like Death Note, Dragon Ball, Aisho 21, and Naruto, which was most of the covers that I could find. As for the last Asian magazine, I could only find this one on the MyAnimeList database, but it's one called IQ Jump. Now, disclaimer here, the only thing I could find about it is that it was active at least since the 1980s, and it seems to still be, and it publishes manhwa, which are Korean manga if you don't know. And also that it was bi-weekly, at least that's what it says in the cover. So I think this is a Korean magazine from Jump that publishes their own original material. But I couldn't find any confirmation that it published Jump manga in Korean like all the other magazines that we've talked about so far. Moving back to Europe for the last one, Germany had its own Jump magazine called Banzai. Banzai lasted for some short 4 years, from November 2001 to December 2005, and published One Piece, as they all did, Naruto, Shaman King, and a couple of others, as well as having their own German comics inspired by the manga style. And that, my friends, is all. I hope you enjoyed this journey and that you learned something, because I certainly did. So let me know in comments which magazines piqued your interest the most, and if you want to go on another Jump deep dive, may I recommend the one time where I named all the weekly Shonen Jump series in order? The video is the one on the left, and if you watched till here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.